What happens when a powerful family tries to silence a mother's truth? And the only voice that saves her is her child's. Through betrayal, danger, and snowstorms, Evelyn Hart's journey reminds us that even in darkness, kindness and faith can bring rebirth. This story is inspired by real events. Names and certain details have been changed to protect privacy. But the pain, the courage, and the miracle you're about to witness are entirely true. Tell us in the comments. Do you believe love and truth can survive even the coldest storm? If this story touches you, please like, share, and subscribe to Her Rebirth Path. Every story here beats with real courage, hope, and healing. The city of Washington was frozen still, as if time itself had taken shelter from the storm. Streetlights flickered like candles behind veils of snow, and the wind howled through the empty streets like a choir of ghosts. Evelyn Hart, once the golden voice of a major news network, walked home through the swirl of white, her scarf pulled tight around her face. She had been fearless once, the kind of reporter who could stand before senators and CEOs and ask the questions everyone else was too afraid to. But courage doesn't pay hospital bills or gambling debts. Her father's addiction had drained every account, sold every heirloom, and broken every promise. The proud Hart family was now just Evelyn, her weary mother Rosa, and the cold phone calls from creditors that came like winter thunder. Then Daniel Brooks appeared, all charm and tailored confidence. He was the son of Margaret and Richard Brooks, a family whose photographs hung in the White House hallways and whose names were whispered in Washington salons. Daniel spoke softly, but lived loudly. Fast cars, champagne, the kind of laughter that made heads turn. When he noticed Evelyn at a press event, his eyes lingered too long. His smile was that of a man used to winning. He pursued her relentlessly, flowers at her doorstep, surprise lunches at her office, handwritten letters that made her cheeks flush and her heart forget its caution. For a time, she believed him. She wanted to believe that love could melt status, that goodness could overcome pedigree. But the Brooks family did not. Margaret Brooks, elegant as marble and twice as cold, summoned Evelyn to her estate one afternoon. The parlor smelled of roses and money. "My son is impressionable," she said, sipping tea without looking up. "He mistakes rebellion for affection. This marriage will not happen." Evelyn left with trembling hands and burning cheeks. Yet Daniel only grew more insistent. "They'll come around," he told her, his breath clouding the winter air. "You and I, we'll prove them wrong." His kisses were full of conviction, his promises even fuller. Weeks later, she found the lipstick, not hers. It was a shade too daring, the color of a secret. The scent of another woman's perfume clung to Daniel's coat when he embraced her. The world tilted just slightly as she realized the man who swore devotion had simply added her to a long list of conquests. She tried to end it. She met him at a cafe by the frozen lake, snow falling thick around them. "Daniel, this isn't love," she said, her voice steady though her fingers shook. "It's a game to you. I'm done." His smile vanished. In its place came something harder, colder. He reached into his briefcase and laid down a single folder. Inside, copies of wire transfers, her father's shaky signature on a debt acknowledgement. $300,000, he said evenly. "My money, your father's promise." Her breath caught. "My father would never." "He would, and he did." Daniel leaned forward, lowering his voice. "If you walk away now, I'll call in the debt. Bankruptcy, foreclosure, maybe worse. But if you marry me, the debt disappears. Simple." Outside, the wind howled against the glass. Inside, Evelyn's heart sank into a silence so deep she could hear her own pulse. The snow beyond the window blurred into an endless white, beautiful, suffocating, merciless. She rose to leave, the folder clutched in her shaking hands. "You're not the man I thought you were." Daniel's voice followed her through the door. "No, I'm the man who can save your father." That night, she stood by her apartment window watching the snow fall, trying to think, trying to breathe. Her phone buzzed. It was him again. She almost didn't answer, but she did. His voice was calm, too calm. "If you don't go through with the wedding," he said, "the debt will be handled in another way." There was a pause, a hiss of static, and then click. The call ended. Evelyn stared at her reflection in the dark glass. Behind her, the city lights flickered like dying stars. Outside, the snow kept falling, heavy and endless, as if trying to bury the world in silence. And somewhere in that silence, she wondered, what exactly did he mean by another way? The wedding of Daniel and Evelyn was the kind that filled newspapers. White roses cascading from marble stairs. A senator's son marrying the fallen angel of journalism. Cameras flashed, champagne glittered, and the orchestra played beneath a ceiling of crystal light. Yet for Evelyn, every note felt hollow, like music echoing in an empty church. Her father's eyes were damp with guilt as he walked her down the aisle. Rosa, in her modest dress, clutched a tissue pretending her tears were joy. The Brooks family sat in the front row like an audience at a royal performance. Perfect posture, frozen smiles. They didn't see Evelyn as a bride. They saw her as a problem solved. After the vows, Daniel kissed her with the perfection of a man performing for the cameras. But when the guests cheered, his hand slipped from hers, and his smile disappeared before the flash faded. That was the first time she understood. She had not married a man. She had entered into a contract. Winter lingered long that year. Evelyn often stood at the grand window of their mansion on Foxhall Road, watching snow gather along the iron gates. Daniel was rarely home. "Meetings?" he would say. "Trips?" The tabloids said otherwise. His name appeared in gossip columns beside actresses and heiresses, his arm always draped around someone new. When Evelyn discovered she was pregnant, she hoped the child might soften him, that maybe fatherhood could awaken the part of him that once looked at her with warmth. But instead, Daniel's absence grew colder. "Don't expect me to change diapers," he scoffed one morning, slipping on his tailored coat. "My father didn't, and I turned out fine." Margaret Brooks, ever composed, only smiled thinly. "Just focus on looking presentable, dear. You're part of the family now." The months blurred into loneliness. Evelyn decorated the nursery herself. Pale yellow curtains, a wooden crib painted white. She sang softly as she worked, not to the child, but to her own fading courage. And then, one night in late December, the snowstorm came. The city went dark under the weight of it. Evelyn's contractions began as the clock struck midnight. Daniel was at a charity gala in New York. She called. No one answered. It was Rosa who arrived breathless, cheeks flushed with frost, gripping her daughter's hand through every wave of pain. Lily was born just before dawn. The hospital room was silent, except for the soft cry of the baby and the sound of snow tapping at the window. Evelyn looked down at the tiny life in her arms, a girl with her eyes and Daniel's dark lashes. And for a moment, the world felt warm again. But when the nurse asked for the father's name, the emptiness returned. "Daniel Brooks," Evelyn whispered, though he wasn't there to hear it. Back at the mansion, The nursery waited untouched. The expensive crib, the perfect mobile. Everything gleamed and smelled of polish, not love. Evelyn soon realized that in that house, silence was the loudest sound. Months passed. Daniel's appearances were limited to photo ops. He'd pose with Lily for magazine spreads titled The Perfect Power Family, then hand the baby back to the nanny as if she were a borrowed prop. At night, Evelyn would sit beside the cradle, listening to the faint hum of the heater, her hand resting on her daughter's chest, counting the tiny breaths that made life worth staying for. 2 years went by before Evelyn finally stopped pretending. She filed for divorce on a gray morning that smelled of rain and freedom. The court battle was swift. Daniel's lawyers made sure of that. But Evelyn didn't care about property or money. She only wanted Lily. When the judge's gavel fell, she left the courtroom carrying her sleeping child, her wedding ring left behind on the polished floor. That night, she and Rosa moved into a small rented room above a bakery, 16 square meters, no view, no luxury. The wallpaper peeled at the corners. The radiator clanked like an old heartbeat. Yet for the first time in years, Evelyn could breathe. Noah, her younger brother, fixed a wobbly chair and made Lily laugh. Rosa brewed tea on a small stove. And Ranger, the 5-year-old German shepherd gifted by a kind neighbor who was moving away, circled the child protectively, curling beside her blanket. Outside, snow still covered the streets. But inside that tiny room, warmth gathered. Fragile, real, and alive. Evelyn realized she hadn't lost everything after all. She had lost gold and marble, but kept something rarer. Love without pretense. And that night, as Lily fell asleep on her mother's chest, Evelyn whispered softly, "We'll start again." The window pane trembled as the wind passed by. Gentle, almost like a blessing. The winter that year came early, sharp, merciless, and eerily quiet. Snow covered the city like a burial shroud, hiding the cracks beneath its beauty. Evelyn, now working as a local columnist, had grown used to the rhythm of her modest life, the hiss of the old radiator, Lily's laughter, and the steady breath of Ranger sleeping by the door. She no longer looked back, or at least she tried not to. But in another part of Washington, Daniel Brooks was drowning in the ruins of his own making. The tabloids no longer called him the Golden Son. His charm had curdled into arrogance. His business ventures collapsed under rumors of gambling and infidelity. And then came the cruelest blow of all, the doctor's verdict. "Permanent infertility," the man had said, pushing his glasses up his nose. "It may have been caused by your lifestyle, Mr. Brooks. I'm sorry." Those 2 words, "I'm sorry," echoed in Daniel's head long after he left the clinic. He wasn't sorry. He was furious. Furious at Evelyn, at the child she took with her, at the world that dared to move on without him. The Brooks family, once untouchable, was now cracking under whispers. Richard Brooks had quietly retired from the administration, and Margaret, forever the image of control, now spent her mornings in meetings with lawyers, silencing gossip and repairing what reputation remained. At dinner, Daniel sat in silence, staring at the untouched steak on his plate. "She took everything," he said at last. "She took your child," his mother corrected coolly. "But she also carries your weakness. Do you understand what that means?" Daniel's fingers tightened around his glass. "It means she doesn't deserve her. It means..." Margaret leaned closer, her pearls catching the chandelier's light, "that you will take back what is rightfully yours. And we will make sure it happens." From that night, a plan began to form. Slow, deliberate, wrapped in the silk of legality but carrying the chill of malice. Under the guidance of his family's lawyers, Daniel filed for expanded custody rights. The case dragged for months, but Evelyn's quiet strength and clean record kept Lily by her side. When the courts refused to bend, Margaret found another way. "Sometimes," she murmured to Daniel one evening, pouring herself a drink, "life offers opportunities. Tragic, but useful." Her son looked at her, the meaning dawning slowly and darkly. Weeks later, the snow fell heavier than it had all season. Evelyn had stayed late at the community paper, finishing an article about winter shelters for homeless families. Lily was at home with Rosa, coloring beside the fireplace. The streets were empty, the city wrapped in white silence. As she drove across the narrow bridge toward home, headlights flared in her rearview mirror, bright, blinding, and far too close. She slowed down. The truck behind her didn't. The impact came fast. Metal shrieked, glass exploded, and the world spun sideways. Evelyn's car crashed into the guardrail with a thunderous crunch, snow and smoke filling her lungs. She heard nothing but the pounding of her own heart. Then, barking, frantic, desperate, Ranger. He had jumped the fence, chased the sound, clawed at the car door until neighbors came running. By the time they pulled her out, her hands were blue, her breath shallow, but she was alive. Barely. When she woke up in the hospital, days had passed. Her body ached like shattered porcelain, and her mind was fogged with painkillers. Rosa sat by her bedside, her eyes swollen from sleepless nights. The police said it was a hit and run. Her mother whispered, "They're still investigating." But no one ever came. No charges were filed. The story vanished from the news within 48 hours. Someone had made sure of it. Evelyn stared at the ceiling, her body trembling. She remembered the headlights, deliberate, closing in, and she knew. The accident wasn't random. It was punishment, a warning. And worst of all, Lily was now in Daniel's care temporarily, while Evelyn recovered. A custody order signed under the pretense of safety. The world had once again been rearranged by the hands of power. When she was discharged, the cold January wind bit into her skin as she stood outside the hospital. But somewhere within her broken ribs, a new resolve began to burn. She looked at the horizon, pale, cruel, endless, and whispered, "No one will save us this time." That night, back in her small room, she sat beside Ranger, who rested his muzzle on her knee. His eyes, loyal, steady, reflected the light of the small fire. Evelyn reached down and stroked his head. "We'll start over," she said softly. For her, and for the first time since the crash, she didn't cry. The snow fell again, gently this time. Not as an ending, but as a promise. Winter was already softening when Evelyn took her first steps without a cane. The rehab center smelled faintly of antiseptic and hope. The kind of hope that crept in quietly, without grand promises. Each morning she walked the same narrow hallway, her reflection trembling in the glass windows, a woman rebuilt from bruises and belief. It took months, but she learned how to walk again, how to live again. Her scars faded slower than her pain, but the ache in her heart became something steadier, something almost sacred. Resilience. She returned to her small desk at the community newspaper, hands trembling slightly as she typed her first piece. It wasn't about tragedy or politics. It was about a bus driver who used his own money to buy coats for homeless children. The story, titled "Kindness in the Cold," went viral. Within days, people sent coats, donations, and letters of gratitude. Evelyn's name appeared in print again, not as a victim of a crash, but as a voice of warmth in a frozen world. A year later, the court finally granted her request: full custody of Lily. Evelyn prepared the room carefully. Pink curtains, storybooks, and Ranger's bed right beside the little ones. The day she picked her daughter up felt like spring. But the moment Lily stepped into the apartment, Evelyn sensed it, the invisible wall between them. The child was polite, quiet, distant. She looked at her mother as if seeing a stranger who happened to share her name. When Evelyn knelt down and reached for a hug, Lily hesitated. "Dad said you only gave birth to me," she whispered, her small fingers clutching the strap of her backpack. It was a knife disguised as a sentence. Evelyn froze, then smiled softly. "And I loved you before you even took your first breath." But the damage had been done. Each weekend, Lily visited the Brooks mansion, where Margaret's honeyed words poured like poison. "Your real family is here, sweetheart. That woman just carried you. Look in the mirror. You have your father's face." And Lily did. Her dark eyes, her lashes, even her stubborn chin mirrored Daniel's. Each time she returned home, Evelyn noticed it. The hesitation, the measured distance, the quiet confusion. One evening, as snow tapped lightly against the window, Evelyn laid out the truth in the gentlest way she knew. She showed Lily the framed DNA test results in their old photographs, her baby's first steps, the hospital bracelet, the small curl of hair she'd saved in a box. Lily frowned. "Dad said you made these up. He said you like to pretend." Evelyn didn't argue. She only smiled and brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's forehead. "Maybe one day you'll see for yourself. Until then, I'll keep loving you, even if you don't believe me yet." That night, after Lily fell asleep, Evelyn sat beside Ranger by the fireplace. The dog's steady breathing reminded her of everything that had survived: her body, her faith, her capacity to love without condition. She realized that anger couldn't win this battle. Only patience could. In the following weeks, she kept writing. Stories of quiet goodness, of people who refused to give up. Her column, "The Warmth of Winter," became a local favorite. Readers sent her letters about forgiveness, resilience, and faith. Some even shared how her words helped them find courage to mend their families. And every evening, Evelyn read one of those letters aloud to Lily, not as a lecture, but as a lullaby. Slowly, something changed. The girl stopped flinching when Evelyn brushed her hair. She laughed once, just once, when Ranger stole her sock. And for Evelyn, that small laugh felt like sunlight breaking through years of snow. Love, she realized, was not an argument to be won. It was a seed, fragile, buried under frost, that only time and warmth could bring back to life. Outside, the first flakes of spring snow began to melt. Inside, a different kind of thaw had already begun. The snow that winter fell softly, like feathers instead of knives. It coated the narrow streets in silver silence, wrapping Evelyn's little house in a fragile peace. Inside, laughter began to return, hesitant at first, then brighter, like sunlight thawing frost. Ranger was always the first to sense it. The old German shepherd would nudge Lily's mittens every evening, tails sweeping across the worn rug, until the girl finally giggled and followed him outside. There, under the faint porch light, the two would play. A child and a dog chasing snowballs into the dark, their laughter ringing through the night. Evelyn watched from the window, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea, her heart swelling with both joy and ache. Every night after Lily went to bed, Evelyn sat at her desk, writing letters she never sent. Each one began the same way. "My dearest Lily." She filled them with memories and truths. The day she first felt her baby kick, the lullaby she sang the night Lily was born, the promises she whispered while holding her tiny hand. She tucked the letters into a small wooden box, along with keepsakes. A faded ultrasound photo, a hospital bracelet, a lock of golden brown hair from Lily's first haircut. She locked the box gently, whispering to herself, "Someday, she'll find you. Someday she'll know." For a while, life settled into quiet rhythm. Lily still visited her father on weekends, a routine Evelyn dreaded but endured. She always kissed her daughter goodbye at the door and said, "Be good, sweetheart. I'll be right here when you come back." But one Sunday evening, the storm that had been silent for years began to move again. At the Brooks mansion, laughter and music floated from the dining hall, where Daniel and Margaret entertained their friends. Lily, bored, wandered into the study, the one lined with glass cabinets and the faint scent of cigar smoke. She wasn't supposed to be there, but curiosity often walks before reason. Through the half-open door, she heard her father's voice, low and sharp. "Last time, it didn't work," he said. Margaret's voice followed, smooth as velvet but cold as steel. "Then make sure it does. We can't afford another failure. She's too loud now, too visible." Lily froze. Her small hands trembled. She didn't understand everything, but she understood enough. They were talking about her mother. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Without thinking, she tapped the side of her wrist, the digital watch Evelyn had given her for her last birthday. It began recording, a quiet red light glowing beneath her sleeve. "People think she's some saint," Daniel's voice hissed, "writing about kindness while living off pity. If she just disappeared, it would all go away." "Then make it look clean," Margaret whispered. "No loose ends." The words sliced through Lily's chest like shards of ice. She stumbled back, nearly tripping. Over the rug, her breath coming in ragged bursts. The world tilted, blurry and cold. Somehow, she managed to slip away unnoticed, clutching the tiny recorder on her wrist like a heartbeat she could control. That night, in her room, she sat before the mirror. For years, she'd been told she looked exactly like her father. His eyes, his smile, his blood. But as she stared now, something shifted. The reflection that gazed back wasn't his. Her eyes, deep, brown, gentle, were her mother's. She could see Evelyn in every curve, every line softened by warmth instead of cruelty. Her throat tightened. She lifted her hand to touch her face, as if confirming that she belonged to the woman who kissed her forehead every night, who waited in the cold just to wave goodbye. For the first time, the stories whispered in the mansion halls began to crumble. Ranger's collar jingled softly beside her. The dog had followed her upstairs, laying his head on her knee, as if he knew the world had just changed for her. She pressed her forehead to his fur, whispering, "You knew all along, didn't you?" The next morning, Lily woke before dawn. Snow still fell outside, pale and quiet, blanketing the world in innocence. She held the watch tight in her palm, the proof she didn't yet understand how to use, but knew she must protect. Downstairs, Daniel's voice echoed faintly from the hall, calling her for breakfast. She glanced once more at her reflection in the mirror and whispered, "I'm not like you." Then she slipped the watch back onto her wrist, pulled on her coat, and followed Ranger down the stairs. Her small shoulders straightened, her heart carrying something new. Not fear, not confusion, but the first fragile root of truth. Outside, the morning light broke through the snow clouds, gentle and golden, like hope finally remembering her name. The blizzard came without warning, a curtain of white swallowing the city whole. Wind rattled the windows of Evelyn's small house, and the fire in the hearth flickered uncertainly. She sat at her desk, surrounded by unfinished notes for her next column, when she heard the sound. A faint knock, hesitant, then again louder, trembling. She opened the door, and there stood Lily, soaked and shivering, her cheeks streaked with tears and melting snow. Ranger darted forward first, pressing his warm body against the child's legs. Evelyn fell to her knees. "Lily, my love, what happened?" The little girl couldn't speak at first. Her breath came in short bursts, her hands clutching something inside her coat. Then, with a small sob, she pulled out the digital watch, its face cracked, a small red light still blinking. "They were going to hurt you, Mom," she whispered, voice barely audible over the wind. "I heard them, Daddy and Grandma. I recorded it. I didn't know what to do." Evelyn gathered her daughter into her arms, her tears falling silently into Lily's hair. The snow swirled around them at the doorstep, as if the whole world held its breath. "You did the right thing, sweetheart," she said softly. "You came home." By morning, the storm had not yet lifted, but Evelyn knew what she had to do. She called Nora West, her lawyer, the woman who had once told her, "Truth takes time, but it never stays buried." Nora arrived within the hour, her coat dusted with snow, her expression grave yet calm. When she pressed the button on the little watch and the voices played, the warmth drained from the room. Daniel's tone was unmistakable, cold, deliberate. "Make it look clean," he said. And then Margaret's voice, smooth as glass. "She's too visible now. It has to end." Nora looked up, eyes burning. "This isn't just cruelty. This is conspiracy." 2 days later, they were in court. The storm still raged outside, turning the courthouse steps into slick marble drifts. Inside, the air was tense. Rows of journalists whispered behind their notebooks. But when Evelyn walked in, pale, thin, her back straight, silence followed. Across the aisle sat Daniel and his legal team. Expensive suits, gleaming shoes, and the hollow arrogance of those who believed they could buy truth. Margaret sat behind her son, chin lifted, her pearls glinting like ice. Evelyn sat beside Nora, clutching a folded handkerchief. Lily was not in the courtroom. She was safe at home with Rosa and Ranger. But her presence filled every heartbeat of her mother's silence. The proceedings began. Daniel's attorney spoke first, his voice slick as oil. He painted Evelyn as unstable, emotionally unfit, and vengeful. Every word was a dagger wrapped in silk. Evelyn said nothing. She waited. When it was Nora's turn, she stood with the stillness of someone who carried lightning in her veins. "We will not waste words," she said. "The evidence will speak." And she pressed the small silver button on the watch. At first, just static. Then, the voices. Daniel's, sharp and angry. Margaret's, calm, commanding. The words echoed through the courtroom, filling the space where lies had once lived. "Make it look clean. She's too visible now. It has to end." Silence fell like snow. No one moved. Even the judge froze, pen hovering above the page. The only sound was the faint hum of the recorder, and beyond that, the moaning wind scraping across the frosted windows. Evelyn looked straight ahead. Her hands trembled slightly, but her eyes were steady, eyes that had seen pain, yet refused to bow to it. For the first time, Daniel didn't meet her gaze. He stared down at the polished floor, jaw tight, face ashen. The judge leaned back, exhaling slowly. "This court will recess," he said. voice low, heavy. Until further review of this evidence. As the bailiff called the break, Nora placed a gentle hand on Evelyn's shoulder. "It's over," she whispered. "You did it." But Evelyn shook her head. "No," she said softly, watching the snow fall outside. "We did it," she did. Through the courthouse window, she imagined Lily's face. Small, brave, shining with the quiet courage that had changed everything. Outside, the snowstorm began to ease. The wind softened, and for the first time in years, Evelyn felt something she hadn't dared to name. Peace. Fade out. The sound of wind fading into stillness, like a heartbeat slowing after fear. When the verdict was read, the world seemed to exhale. Snow still blanketed the courthouse steps, but inside, the chill finally broke. Evelyn stood motionless, the words echoing like a prayer. Full custody granted to Miss Evelyn Hart. Immediate investigation into the Brooks family affairs. For a long moment, she couldn't breathe. Then she felt Nora's steady hand on her shoulder, grounding real. "It's over," Nora whispered. But Evelyn only shook her head, her eyes glistening. "No, it's beginning." In the following weeks, headlines blazed across the country. Brooks dynasty scandal uncovered. Hidden beneath the family's political prestige were layers of corruption, tax fraud, money laundering, campaign bribes, even obstruction of justice. What had once been admired as a model household of service and virtue now stood stripped bare before the world. Daniel and Margaret were arrested on a gray morning. Cameras flashed as they were escorted from their estate. Daniel with his jaw clenched, Margaret wearing her pearls like armor. Evelyn didn't watch the footage. She had no need to. She had lived their cruelty. She didn't need to see their downfall. Instead, she focused on rebuilding what truly mattered. At the little house on Maple Avenue, warmth returned. Not from wealth, but from presence. Rosa brewed cocoa in the kitchen, her laughter rising with the scent of cinnamon. Noah hung strings of golden lights across the windows, humming off-key Christmas tunes, though it wasn't Christmas yet. And Ranger, proud as ever, sat by the fire wearing a tin badge Noah had made from an old soda cap. Scratched letters spelling guardian. One evening, Evelyn and Lily sat on the couch, wrapped in the same blanket. The firelight danced across the girl's face, softening her once hardened eyes. The past weeks had been a whirlwind. Interviews, hearings, questions. Yet here, in the quiet, there was peace. Lily traced her mother's palm with small fingers, following the faint scar near her wrist. "Does it still hurt, Mom?" Evelyn smiled. "Not anymore." Lily hesitated, then looked up, her eyes shimmering in the golden light. "Mom?" The word came out small, fragile, but real, a word she hadn't said in years. Evelyn's breath caught. She didn't answer, just pulled her daughter close and let the warmth of that single word settle deep in her soul. Outside, the last snow of winter drifted past the window. No longer fierce, just gentle, like forgiveness. Later that night, Evelyn stepped outside for air. The sky was pale silver, and the first hint of dawn crept along the horizon. She watched her breath rise in small clouds, disappearing into the morning. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel the cold. Life hadn't given her revenge. It had given her truth, and that was enough. She realized that justice wasn't about punishment. It was about peace. Some wounds closed not through victory, but through grace. Inside, Ranger barked softly, as if calling her back. She turned to see Lily at the window, waving. Behind her, Rosa was pouring cocoa, and Noah was pretending to polish Ranger's badge with a dish towel. Evelyn smiled, feeling the warmth of her small, imperfect miracle of a family. The world outside could still be cruel, unpredictable. But inside this little home, love was steady. And perhaps that was the real kind of power. She whispered into the cold air, as if speaking to the years that had tried to break her. Kindness isn't weakness. It's what saves us. And as the first rays of sunlight reached across the snow, Evelyn felt the truth of it. That faith, when held through the darkest nights, becomes its own kind of resurrection. The storm had ended. The dawn had come. In every storm, there is a moment when the wind seems too strong and faith feels too small. Yet that is where miracles begin. Evelyn's story reminds us that God's light often enters through the cracks left by our pain, turning what was once broken into something holy and whole again. If you are walking through your own winter, remember, love is not lost and faith is never wasted. Every act of kindness you give may be the very prayer someone else is waiting for. Share this story, leave a comment of hope, and subscribe to her Rebirth path to keep spreading grace and healing in a world that needs it more than ever. May God bless everyone who watches.